It was supposed to be another search day, another cold morning, another group of volunteers lining the road, another round of hope slowly running out. But before the search could even begin, someone else found her. Near mile marker 40 on Boulder Canyon Drive, 2 park rangers were doing their regular patrol. This wasn't deep into the wilderness. This was not miles off trail. It was very near to established paths, near a drainage culvert beneath the road, near places that had already been searched. And that's where they saw her, lying on snow-covered rocks, partially hidden by the slope, just yards from the culvert. It was Megan Trussell. And so, Megan had now been found. But what no one could understand, not then and not now, was how she hadn't been found sooner. Because searchers had been here before. Search dogs had been here too. Drones had been flown overhead. Volunteers had walked this exact stretch of road. One searcher even later said he had been within 5 feet of where Megan was found. 5 feet, that's 2 or 3 steps away. Megan was still wearing the same clothes. She was lying on her back, one arm stretched outwards. Nearby there were details too that no one could explain. Perhaps most disturbing and confusing of all. She was wrapped up in a black sheet that did not belong to her. At the time, the public did not know any of this, but what they were told, quickly, was that there was no sign of foul play, that whatever had happened to Megan, she did it to herself. At this point, the town thought it understood what had happened, but the truth is, the real story hadn't even started yet. By the way, this is Dark Case, and you can call me Jack. I bring you rare and unseen true crime cases, as well as other things that you may later regret knowing, with multiple uploads every single week. So if all of that sounds like your kind of thing, then make sure you join the Dark Case family now by hitting subscribe and turning all notifications on. And now for today's silly little question. How many gigs or concerts have you been to, and what was the best? Let me know down in the comments. A quick update as well. The Dark Case Patreon is now no more. However, I have created some new tiers here on YouTube memberships. So there are some new perks including exclusive videos, as well as a behind the scenes podcast that I record in my car. In a cemetery, that's true. But now, on with the video. To really understand why so many people are saying, wait, this doesn't make any sense, you really have to go back to Sunday night. This was February the 9th, and that evening, Megan Trussell was in her dorm room at CU Boulder. She was a freshman, a film major, close with her family, known for answering texts quickly, and not someone who anyone thought would choose to disappear. She had plans, school, friends, a partner, a cousin's birthday coming up, a life that was actively blossoming. There would be no goodbye note, no concerning messages to her parents, no indication that she planned to vanish. Megan shared a dorm room with another freshman. Her name was Haley. At first, nothing seemed unusual. 2 college students, a shared space, and a newfound independence. But over time, small things began to pile up. And in hindsight, those small things seemed like they could matter. By Thanksgiving of her first semester, Megan had started telling her mom that something wasn't right. And it wasn't one big fight. Instead, it was a building pressure or tension in the room. Haley often had a close friend staying in a dorm room. We will call them Elle. At first, Megan didn't mind. But Elle was always there. Day after day, night after night. This meant that Megan started to feel like a guest in her own room. She valued her privacy, I think we all do, to be honest. She liked watching movies alone, listening to music and just decompressing. But that space for her was now gone. And when Megan tried to set boundaries, things still didn't improve. There was a whiteboard outside their dorm room, and Megan's mother, Vanessa, had bought a full set of markers, 32 colours. something she could use on the board. At first it all seemed playful, leaving notes back and forth, jokes, little messages. But then Megan noticed something. Her messages kept on disappearing. They were being erased and replaced. And strangely, only hers were being wiped off. It never seemed to be Hayley's. Mother Vanessa later described the replacement as snarky, crappy comments. So it did feel intentional. It was like someone was trying to undermine her, but to do it in a sneaky, quiet way. There were other things too, a strange sense of guilt that was kind of forced upon her. If Megan spent time with new friends, she'd hear about it from Hayley. If she wasn't in the room enough, then that was a problem. If she wanted space, it seems that was a problem too. Still though, Megan did not escalate matters as far as we know. She didn't report anything. She didn't cause any scenes. That wasn't who she was from everything I can find out about her. So, Sunday night, February the 9th, this was Super Bowl Sunday. Roommate Hayley was scheduled to work that evening. This meant that Megan could have her boyfriend over. This wasn't anything unusual. He was there until around 9 p.m, when Hayley left work on her break. This was something that she didn't normally do, and so she went back to the dorm room and an argument followed. Hayley was upset that the boyfriend was in the room. She said that boundaries had been crossed for her. I don't believe the exchange lasted very long, and then Hayley went back to work. Not long after, Megan's boyfriend said that he didn't want to be involved in any drama. I believe he suggested that they take a break. He left the dorm room at 9:17 p.m, and what happens next is documented, because we have the text messages. At 9:28 p.m, Megan tried to call Hayley, but she got no answer. Just 1 minute later, Megan sent a message. It said, "I'm so sorry. You won't have to worry about it happening again." Now I think we can take a few things from that message. 1, we can presume that Megan was alive and well at 9:29 p.m. 2, it could be her literally saying, "Sorry, I won't do it again." 3, she could have been saying that it wouldn't happen again because she split up from her boyfriend. And 4, it could sound like she wasn't coming back, depending on how you read into it. But I must say, to me, it just sounds like someone probably just trying to keep the peace. Someone that was planning to come back, and someone that was thinking about the future and her actions going forwards. But maybe in that moment, she just felt defeated. Hayley did reply to that message. She said, "It's honestly not okay, but it's whatever. I want him gone when I get out of work." Megan then responded, "It's over." Hayley later said that she thought that meant that their relationship was over, and it actually does seem that it was. At 9:36 p.m, Megan left the dorm. She didn't pack a bag. She didn't grab any extra clothes. She didn't dress for the cold conditions, nor did she tell anyone where she was going. Security footage showed her walking alone. Her gait appears normal. There are no signs of panic, no signs of distress. Meanwhile, Hayley finished her shift. She clocked out at 11:29 p.m. and returned to the dorm at 11:37 p.m. By then, Megan was not there. And instead of calling Megan, instead of texting Megan, Hayley messaged her friend, Elle, instead. She told them that she'd had an issue with her roommate and asked them to come over. Elle then arrived and they slept in Megan's bed. This was something that seemed to happen a lot, by the way, which I do find odd, especially if you're talking about boundaries, but anyway. And Megan then never came back that night, or the next. So by now, days had passed, and Hayley did not report Megan missing. She didn't contact her family. She didn't alert campus staff or police. And when Megan's mother finally reached out on February the 12th, Hayley showed no sense of urgency. She said that she hadn't seen Megan since Sunday night, and when Mother Megan pressed her, Hayley said that she'd check the bathrooms. Megan's family knew something was deeply wrong. Nobody had heard from her, and that wasn't Megan. Her father would later say, when she didn't respond, that's when terror set in. Megan's mother later said that she couldn't believe what she was hearing. 3 days and no concern whatsoever. And then when Megan's family arrived at the dorm to look for Megan, they found Elle once again sitting on Megan's bed. Elle was also using Megan's things. Father Joe recalled a moment that stuck with him. You see, the family was clearly in crisis. They were desperately trying to figure out what to do. And it was then that Haley popped her head in. She was smiling, grabbing something from her bed. She said thank you and left. Megan's father Joe said that there was no recognition for the situation, no gravity to what was going on for her, no awareness that something was obviously terribly wrong. And something else worth mentioning, when Megan did not return home that night, roommate Haley just assumed that Megan had gone to her sister's. However, she didn't call or text to check, nor did she raise an alarm of any kind. It was only now that campus police were notified, but even then at first they brushed it off. They suggested that Megan was probably couch surfing, but her family knew her better, so they pushed for investigations. Search efforts finally began to ramp up. Security footage was now reviewed, and phone data was finally analysed. And following that, attention finally turned west towards Boulder Canyon.
If you saw the girl with the bright red hair,
Megan Trussell is hard to miss.
She has a very distinctive purse. There aren't any like it, I don't think, because I made it for her.
But CU Boulder police say the film student hasn't been seen since Sunday night at her dorm, Hallett Hall.
Megan was last seen on the video surveillance walking towards her sister's apartment. She didn't go there. She never arrived.
Her mom, Vanessa Diaz, says she talked to her daughter the night before.
Her and I texted a bunch on Saturday evening. One of her cousins is turning 20, and so we were planning for her birthday party coming up next weekend. And Megan was very excited about it.
Vanessa says texts this week have gone unanswered. On Wednesday, Megan's parents realized neither had heard from their daughter. So Vanessa checked on Megan's phone activity through their T-Mobile account.
I saw that there was no activity whatsoever on her phone after 8:45 p.m. on Sunday.
They contacted CU Boulder police on Wednesday. They're coordinating with other police agencies and the FBI to search for Megan. In the meantime, her friends and family are posting her picture around campus, hoping someone knows something that can help.
And if you see her and she's in distress, give her a hand, report it to the authorities so that we can make sure she's safe.
Later during interviews, Haley told investigators several things. She said that Megan hated the outdoors, that she hated the cold, and that she did not like walking places. Those statements came from the roommate herself, and yet, in the days after Megan disappeared, Haley had been telling co-workers something very different. She actually said that Megan was thinking of opting out, that she had taken a lot of Adderall. But when questioned about this though, Haley denied saying that. Months later, she gave an interview saying that she believed Megan had done this to herself. Another statement that was contradicting what she told police. So there were at least two versions, two timelines, two explanations. Nobody has publicly accused Haley of harming Megan, and me nor this video is doing that either. All I'm doing is just looking at publicly available information, the behaviour, the text messages, the lack of urgency, the contradictions, and all of those are real. They are documented, and they are details that must matter in this case. Because when Megan walked out of that dorm, all she was doing was walking away from a temporary conflict. But nobody that knows her believes that what she was actually doing was walking away from her life. And so, from that moment onwards, everything about this case really stops making sense. In the CCTV footage, it shows Megan walking along campus. She was wearing white platform sneakers, red yoga pants, a black short-sleeved shirt, a light denim-style jacket, her signature purse. What she didn't have was a heavy coat, hiking gear, or a flashlight. On that night, it was 17 degrees outside. Some important things to know and remember too. Megan was afraid of the dark, she hated the cold, she didn't like walking long distances, and she actively avoided hiking. Multiple people have confirmed this. She did not wander around outside for fun. She did not seek out remote areas for some quiet time. And she had never been to Boulder Canyon before. At 9:52 p.m, Megan was seen on camera once again. She was now near the Champion Center, but after that, she vanished. There was no more campus footage.
Since Wednesday, the CUPD reached out to the FBI, a tactic that didn't surprise former Douglas County Sheriff Tony Spurlock.
I think a lot of agencies notify the FBI because they have a lot of resources and they can do a lot of stuff with phones. If her phone's still pinging, and it was pinging off a tower, that's very valuable information for law enforcement, because you can triangulate that and you can get a lot of information about when it was last moving.
Megan's parents tell me that's part of the reason these teams are focused up here in the canyon.
We haven't quite hit any homes or anything that way.
While another team focuses a couple miles away.
Folsom Drive was the area that she was last seen.
Dozens of people who drop what they're doing to help Megan's family, organizing a makeshift command center in the parking lot of the Boulder Library, and sending family friends like David Lamb out to knock on doors.
This neighborhood specifically is where we think it's most likely that she would have been caught on a Ring camera or a security camera. There's a lot of love for that family. There's a lot of love for those girls, both those daughters, and we just want to get Megan home safe.
While the search is frantic, the one thing not hard to find is optimism.
You're welcome. We're going to find her. We are.
Investigators later said that Megan's phone pinged near the mouth of Boulder Canyon at 10:45 p.m. and then again much deeper into the canyon at 11:55 p.m. That second ping was near mile marker 40. This is 3 miles from her dorm, in freezing temperatures, in the dark, along a highway. This is past the areas that students are told to avoid. And of all of those details, there is something that people keep coming back to. A phone ping does not necessarily mean that the person holding the phone was its owner. It only means that the phone was there. Her mother, Vanessa Diaz, later wrote, "Knowing my daughter, I don't believe she wanted to be out that night. I think she just didn't want to be in the dorm when the roommate came back." Mother Vanessa believes that Megan was looking for somewhere familiar, somewhere close, somewhere safe. But Boulder Canyon isn't any of those things to Megan, and nothing about Megan as a person points to her wanting to go there. By the time Megan was reported missing, valuable time had already passed. And as we know in cases like this, time really does matter. Because what happened after Megan walked off campus is where the story completely falls apart. Because next comes the search, the covert, the items that didn't belong to her, and the evidence that raises the questions that no one seems to be able to answer. If this was something that Megan had chosen to do to herself, then why does so much of it look like someone else was involved? By February the 13th, multiple agencies were now involved. There were drones, search dogs, volunteer teams, and they focused on the area near mile marker 40. This was a place that Megan's phone had last pinged. On that day, a volunteer searcher noticed something strange, a drainage culvert beneath the highway. It was large enough to crouch inside, and it was known locally as a place where unhoused people sometimes stayed. So he checked it. 8 feet inside that tunnel, he spotted an empty prescription bottle. At the time, he assumed it belonged to someone else, so he just put it back and moved on. Now 2 days later, February the 15th, more than 130 volunteers were gathered for another day of searching. These included Megan's parents. Snow began to fall from the sky, and then suddenly, the road was closed off. Rescue vehicles appeared near mile marker 40, and at first people hoped it was just weather-related because of the snow. But then people realised that it wasn't. At 10:30 a.m, 2 park rangers looked down a steep slope, and they saw a body lying among snow-covered rocks, just yards from that same culvert. And it was, of course, Megan.
Moments ago, the Boulder County coroner confirmed that the body they found over the weekend was that of 18-year-old Megan Trussell. They first reported the body found matched her description, however, did not positively identify her until now. She was reported missing last week. They still have not released the cause of death.
She was found on her back, one arm extended out, one arm tucked inside her jacket. She was wearing the same clothes that she'd left campus in days earlier. However, something was wrong. Her right shoe was missing. She wore only a torn black sock. Her purse was gone, her phone was gone, and there was debris under her fingernails. There was a broken stick near her arm, and beneath her body were a pair of grey trousers. They didn't belong to her. In fact, they didn't match anything that she even owned. For all of this evidence that could be called strange, no explanation was given. One deputy on the scene noted something else. He said it appeared that Megan's body had been covered by a black tarp or blanket. Later though, that detail would be disputed. But about this, Megan's mother was adamant. She said she did not leave her dorm with a blanket or tarp. I know my daughter. She would not wrap herself in something taken from trash or left behind in the culvert. So here's where the questions really start piling up. Searchers had been in this exact location. Dogs had been deployed. Drones capable of filtering colours, including red, which Megan was wearing, were flown overhead. Volunteers had been walking past this exact spot. Yet somehow, Megan wasn't seen. From the road, her red pants and colourful hair should have stood out. Snowfall before that day had been minimal, and one volunteer even later said that they'd been within 5 feet of where she was found, and that was 2 days earlier. I don't know about you, but I'm questioning whether Megan was moved there from somewhere else. I mean, it's hard to make this make sense. Inside the culvert, investigators also later documented between 6 and 10 small drops of red DNA. They were fresh in colour, although dry, so they were swabbed. Nearby, they recovered that prescription bottle once again, and this time they actually read the name. This bottle belonged to Megan. Megan always carried her medication with her. She didn't want to leave it in her room, especially not when she knew that other people had access to her room. Her parents were clear about this. Still missing at that time was her phone, her purse, and her second shoe. Days later, however, her phone would surface. It was sold at a resale kiosk. Weeks later, her purse would be found miles away. This was near another culvert.
Loved ones say Megan's purse was found a week ago along US 36, southeast of Table Mesa Drive near the Dry Creek Ditch number 2. That's a few miles away from where her body was discovered.
Her mom made that purse for her specifically. Megan loved that purse. You never saw it without her. We also found out that it was ripped. Just it being ripped from the clasp was weird to us. I don't know if there was some kind of struggle going on, what the situation was, but it doesn't make any sense.
Her family also says they've been searching for the other shoe Megan was wearing.
She only had one shoe when she was found, which was news to us this week. It doesn't make any sense how she would have walked so far from this location to that location and where she ended up being just because her shoes are tall. She's a tiny little gal, but when she puts her shoes on, she's taller, and 3-inch platforms would be hard to walk on with one on.
Megan's family is urging anyone who may have seen something suspicious to please speak up.
I don't want one of these to be one of those cases that goes on for years and years.
Yeah.
We need that closure. We need to get justice for Megan.
She's always here, right? The thought of her is always on my mind, and it's on everybody's mind.
The conversation about Megan Trussell's disappearance hasn't stopped since she went missing back in February.
It comes up with everybody.
It was a conversation between Megan's mother, Vanessa Diaz, and a nonprofit for missing persons that inspired them to do something new.
We connected with Haley Gray, who is part of the Gabby Petito Foundation, but they're the ones who suggested the essentials bags.
Essential bags they will hand out to the unhoused community in Boulder.
People in the unhoused community might not be watching the news.
Inside the 200 bags are daily items people can use and information about her daughter's case. Vanessa says it was an unhoused person that helped them find Megan's phone.
And I saw firsthand, just her talking to people and asking questions, and that led to the phone.
She hopes the unhoused community in Boulder could be the key to learning new details about what happened to her.
There's just too many questions. She's missing a shoe. Her purse was ripped.
Vanessa says she will never stop talking about her daughter.
Getting out there and asking questions and talking to people.
Making sure Megan's story never goes quiet.
Actually is what gets answers and what uncovers the truth.
So the questions remained. Why were strangers selling Megan's things? Why were her belongings so scattered? Why was her body placed in a location that not only had she never visited, it didn't seem like she'd want to? Why was she found somewhere where people had already searched? And why did the scene include items that didn't belong to Megan? With all of this information together, obviously it sounds like something suspicious had occurred. But no, authorities said that she simply did this to herself. But standing in that canyon, with snow falling once again, Megan's family knew one thing: this story wasn't over. In the days after Megan was found, her parents waited for answers. Originally, they were told that there were no signs of trauma, that there was just a scratch, and that scratch was possibly from a branch. That's what they were led to believe. But then, the final autopsy report arrived, and with it, everything changed. Megan's body did not show one minor injury. It showed many, some of which I wouldn't describe as minor. There were so many injuries, in fact, that the list filled almost an entire page. From head to toe, there were injuries to her head, injuries to her face. There were broken teeth, including a missing canine tooth. There was extensive bruises, scrapes, marks that were not explained by a simple fall. And that damage raised an obvious question. How does someone that just walked through miles of frozen terrain end up with injuries this severe? Her parents were clearly stunned, because what they'd been told earlier on, it didn't match what they were reading now. And then came the toxicology reports. Investigators said that Megan's time was ended from the toxic effects of her medication. Hypothermia was also listed as a contributing factor too. And bearing in mind they now had all this evidence, how could you possibly accept that authorities said Megan did this to herself? Megan had been prescribed Adderall for years. She used the extended release medication. She took this at a standard dose. She also had a smaller, immediate release prescription, and this was approved by her longtime doctor. This is not unusual, especially for students, and the amount that was found in her system was not publicly described as extreme. Also notable was that only a small portion of her stomach contents were tested, not the entire thing. And well, somehow things get worse still. No fingernail scrapings were tested, no SA kit was conducted, no additional forensic testing was pursued. And just as a reminder, that is in spite of broken teeth, missing items, an array of unexplained injuries, a torn sock consistent with dragging, belongings scattered miles apart. But the case was closed.
251 pages.
I put this all in a spreadsheet.
All carefully organized and marked.
How many hours have you spent going through this?
I don't even know. I mean, it's like a full-time job.
It's a job that no parent would ever wish for, reviewing their daughter's death investigation.
Megan was very smart, very funny. She listened and she was there for people all the time.
The easiest way from point A to point B for them was to prove it was suicide. I mean, they followed up on a few leads. We know that. We appreciate the work that they did do. But they just didn't do enough of it.
The coroner says she died because of the effects of amphetamines and hypothermia. Her parents not only dispute the cause of death, but are frustrated with how the case was handled. At one point, they found Megan's missing cell phone before law enforcement.
Vanessa and her friends were basically lapping the Boulder County Sheriff's Office. They were doing a better job. They were finding more evidence.
The Boulder County Sheriff's Office declined to interview, but shared a statement in part, quote, "It is standard practice for our agency to limit public comment in cases involving suicide." But another Colorado official is speaking on Megan's case, State Senator Janice Marchman.
I've asked for the Attorney General to take this situation, my unique experience as a legislator and then someone who walks side by side with the family, and let's try to figure out under this lens what we can fix.
Marchman's daughter also goes to CU and lived near Megan on campus. The senator now working on new bills to address how evidence is logged, how families get information from police, and giving options to loved ones that may dispute a cause of death.
We're going to make something happen here so that we can prevent this for other families in the future.
But for Megan's family, they're working to get what was in her stomach tested and a private autopsy review, something community members have donated to support.
That really gives us a lot of strength to work through something so difficult as this.
As a family searches through hundreds of pages for answers on how to grieve their daughter.
Megan's family was told the investigation had taken longer than hoped, and that the conclusion they were given was final. Authorities said that there was no further threat to the community, but as you can imagine, the family weren't alone in their doubts. Subsequently, outside experts reviewed the circumstances and said something very important. They believed the outcome of this case should have been undetermined. Instead, closing the case locked everything in place. Because once a situation like this is labelled as self-inflicted, the investigation effectively stops. Megan's mother Vanessa would later write, "That's deciding the ending, before the story is even told." And there is also one more detail, one that you really can't ignore. Megan's body, according to early reports from a deputy, was seen wrapped in or draped under a black tarp or blanket. That detail was later disputed by authorities, but it was never fully explained either way. And if that is true, if Megan was meant to have met her end all alone, then who covered her up? And why would they do that? By late spring, her family were begging to be taken seriously. They wanted an independent review, a fresh set of eyes on the case. Eventually, state agencies did agree to review the case, but this was not a new investigation, just a review. The passing of time did not mean the questions simply went away. If anything, they were only multiplying. And at the centre of all of them was a single and uncomfortable thought. If Megan did not choose for any of this to happen, then who did? Once the ruling was released publicly, people did not just accept it and move on. Instead, people stopped believing the authorities. Students on campus believed the same thing, that this did not make sense. And Megan's family, understandably, refused to let it all end quietly. Within days, vigils appeared near Boulder Canyon. Candles, flowers, stuffed animals, and Diet Coke.
The CU Boulder student reported missing last week, and then on Monday, her family and friends gathered to honor her legacy and create a memorial.
I believe that Megan is in a better place. I'm kind of a spiritual guy, and I've had signs that she's okay, and that's making me okay. We're never going to get over it. The grief will last the rest of our lives, and we're different people now, and I understand that.
Her father stood out in the cold and said, "It's a terrible thing that's happened, but the best way we can honour her is to get better, to find out what happened." Mother Vanessa was more direct. She didn't mince her words. She didn't soften the important message that she had. She said outright that the investigation was mishandled, that conclusions were reached far too early, that key steps had been skipped, and slowly, through the efforts of the family, others started saying the same thing. Even more questions started spreading online. Why was her purse found in another culvert, but weeks later? Why was one shoe never recovered? Why were the injuries downplayed? Why wasn't additional testing done? And maybe most troubling of all, why did officials tell the family they believed that no crime had occurred, even before the final autopsy report was delivered? Delivering news like that at that time, it sets a narrative, and it's hard to undo. Megan's family weren't asking for outrage. All they wanted was transparency. They were asking for accountability. They were asking for a second pair of eyes. So when the review took place, it was acknowledgement that their concerns were legitimate. Something I haven't mentioned yet is that Megan was Indigenous, and that news, if you watch a lot of true crime, it will probably mean that everything's happened up to this point really doesn't shock you. However, under state law, cases like Megan's require additional scrutiny when circumstances are disputed. Her family also took their fight public in a really unexpected move. Megan's family went to CrimeCon. They spoke to investigators, to journalists, to anyone willing to listen. A reward on the case was announced, then raised and raised again. Because someone out there knows something. I mean, they must, because this just doesn't make sense. And whether that something is big or it's seemingly small, one detail can change everything. Megan's story isn't just about one night or one ruling. It's about what happens when authorities close ranks instead of open doors. Because even now, her parents are still asking the same questions they always have been. If this was self-inflicted, why does it take so much effort to ignore everything that doesn't fit?
It's a new semester at CU for students. And an annual event is underway, this time with a somber tone for one family.
She was here for her parents' weekend last year. Yeah, Megan was participating in the event.
For Vanessa Diaz, it's not a warm welcome to the school year.
Every time I come up to Boulder, I get a feeling of panic, and I just worry so much for the kids that I see walking on the path that Megan walked on, and I just think, you never know. I'll never know what happened exactly to Megan, especially since they are investigating, but maybe we can prevent it from happening again by spreading awareness.
Megan's family believes by sharing her story, more people will see what they do. Awareness that starts with parents on Pearl Street.
It's not going to bring her back, but I really want that justice for her.
Justice, her mother Vanessa says, Megan deserves.
What I would like is for Boulder County and the city of Boulder to recognize and acknowledge that something very horrible happened to Megan.
By now, you know what officials say happened, but what probably matters more is what they're not explaining. Let's start with the timeline. Megan leaves her dorm at 9:36 p.m. She apologises to her roommate minutes earlier. "I'm sorry, you won't have to worry about it happening again." Her phone then pings near the mouth of Boulder Canyon at 10:45 p.m. Then again, deeper in the canyon at 11:55 p.m. After that, there is nothing. No calls, texts, or no known movements. Now consider the terrain. Frozen ground, pitch black, off trail, a hidden culvert, jagged rocks. We know that Megan had no phone with her body. No flashlight, no headlamp, no working light source at all, actually. Then there's a missing shoe that was never found. And the sock that was on that foot. It was clean in a way that it hadn't been walked on. But there was, however, a single tear on the heel. A tear that appears more consistent with dragging than walking. Then there's the location. Her body was found near a culvert already searched, within just a couple of steps where volunteers had stood days earlier, in an area scanned by drones and dogs, and yet no one saw her even 2 or 3 steps away. Then of course there's a misrepresentation of the injuries, of damage all over her body and to her teeth, injuries that were later described by authorities as consistent with a fall. But there is no explanation for where a fall that big could have occurred. There was also the red DNA inside the culvert. Those have never been explained. The grey trousers under Megan's body, they weren't hers, nor were they ever identified. Was she wrapped or covered by a black blanket? That has never been resolved either. So even with all of these holes in the story, authorities were confident enough to close the case. But if that conclusion is solid, then why has there been so much resistance to re-examining it? Why not welcome an independent review? Why not test and retest every piece of evidence? Why not explain the obvious contradictions clearly? In my eyes, in Megan's case, the doubt here doesn't come from conspiracy for conspiracy's sake. It comes from inconsistencies, and this case is really full of them. We can all theorise what happened to Megan that night, but I guess really that's not the point. The point is, if you have been listening, even with one ear while you're doing the dishes, you've probably caught yourself thinking, wait, this doesn't make sense. And once you see that in a case, you really can't unsee it. The case, Megan, her family and friends, all still demand answers. Because whatever happened to Megan Trussell, the story that we've been given does not explain it. Let me know your thoughts and theories down in the comments. Be careful out there, and I'll see you soon.